Good evening, and welcome once again to another edition of Government at Work, a program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly. This program comes to you every Thursday evening on VON Radio, then rebroadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings at 8:30 p.m. It's a program designed to inform and educate you, our listening and viewing audience, as well as to keep you abreast of all of the developments taking place here on the island of Nevis. In addition, our television program, The Bird's Eye View, is aired on Nevis Television every Tuesday and Wednesday evening from 7:15 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. If you miss our Bird's Eye View program, you can log on to our Facebook page to look at any program that you may have missed. Just type in the words Bird's Eye View in the search field. The icons will pop up. You click on the one with the pelican beak forming the V in the words Bird's Eye View. We ask that you share our Facebook page with your family and friends so that they too can be kept abreast of our weekly programming. We will take a short break, and when we return, I shall introduce my guest for this evening's program to you. So stay logged on, for we will be right back.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, I am pleased to have as my guest this evening the Director of Sports here in Nevis, Mr. Jamir Claxton. Jamir, it's been a while since you were last here, and quite a bit has happened since. So it's good to have you back on the program at this time. Good evening and welcome once again to the program.
Okay, good evening, Keith. It's a pleasure being here again to assist in providing information to the general public as it relates to developments in sports in Nevis.
As usual, before we go into our discussions, I like to have a little chit-chat up front, We are coming up on the Easter holidays, and at that time of the year, the Department of Sports normally will be hosting its Easter camp for the children of Nevis. We are still under the COVID-19 pandemic watch, of course, but I have to ask you, will the department be having any Easter camp this year?
Yes, we definitely will be having Easter camp. We are going to be limiting the number of sporting activities that we're going to be having. In addition to that, we're going to be doing them in smaller groups. So the two that we currently are planning or finalizing are in the areas of cricket and in the area of netball. And the plan is to, rather than bring everybody together, to have the groups, have them in smaller groups based on the number of persons registered. So for example, when we do the registration for netball, say we get up to 50 girls, we have to split them. So one group will come in, say probably 9 to 10:30, then another group from 10:30 to 12, something like that. So that is what we're planning at this point in time.
Okay, where are you planning to have it?
Yeah, we're still looking at a number of locations. We have the Bath, Brown Hill, and Gingerland in mind for those netball camps.
Oh, on the courts, like
on the courts, yes.
Okay. Now, quite a lot of people listen to this program, so tell them how they can be registered, where they need to go, if there's a fee involved and so forth. Give them the information.
So first of all, at the department, we won't be charging for this coming Easter camp for any of the sport that we do. You can register at the Department of Sports. Registration opens from March 22nd. Yeah, so you could go at the Department of Sports anytime between 8:30 and 4 p.m. to register.
Okay, great. Now, how has the COVID protocols affected your day-to-day operations, especially as far as training and coaching is concerned? The COVID has set back a lot of people and changed up a lot of things. How did it affect you, if at all?
Yeah, COVID has affected a number of development programs that we usually run. We would have had to adjust some of them. Some of them we would have postponed for the time being. But we do work closely with the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, where our coaches go into the schools and assist with the new PE curriculum. As you know, there's a new PE curriculum introduced recently, which involves teaching the students certain skills, but also evaluating those skills after a certain period. So PE now has an evaluation component, so you could track the progress of the individual students at the school. So our sports officers are now actively engaged in those programs. In addition to that, we also work with the seniors for the exercise programs and so forth. So the senior division, we work with the exercise program, and we also work with the Cicely Brown Integrated School in terms of the special development program.
Okay, great. Let me ask you this. Did you have to increase your staff at all as a result of the COVID, or decrease your staff for that matter?
Well, we have maintained the staff that we had prior to COVID. We've just adjusted the distribution. We know that when it comes to human resources, we have to act accordingly. So we have redistributed the resources based on where needs are most.
Okay. So you were pretty much comfortable with it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, I want to begin this evening discussions on football, specifically the football field at the athletic stadium. I know some work is being done on it currently. So could you give us an update as to what is being done and by whom?
Okay, so the football field, as most probably would know by now, is an integral part of the entire development over at Long Point. Initially, when the field was laid down, it would have seemed that it was laid down improperly. So some work had to be done, because it was, even though it looks good from afar, it was very uneven when you walk on it. And if you are involved in football, you know an uneven field is not a safe field. So we got an expert who works at Four Seasons, Mr. Claxton, Jamir Claxton. I think most persons know him. Yeah, we would have done some evaluation. We would have come up with an action plan as to what needs to be done to get it up to the level required for international football. And Gary, along with his team, along with our Deputy Director, Brian Dow, they are the ones who have been directly involved in getting that project underway, and also making sure that we get it to where we are. That included the field, as I mentioned, the field was uneven, so we had to do a new topography where we identified all the various points. And once we got those points, we were able to do some work in terms of bringing all the points to the same level. So some tremendous progress has been made. We're hoping that soon that we'll be having matches there. As it's probably going to be the premier football ground in Nevis, we would want to maintain a certain standard. So I know one of the discussions has been if the league is going to keep over there, if people are going to practice over there. We are still working on the management aspect of it in terms of its utilization. Because one of the things, and I will allude to ETW Park, is that overuse can be an issue, and it's something that in the past we haven't really paid keen attention to in Nevis, and we'll have to do that with all our new facilities moving forward, especially those that involve natural grass.
Good. I'm happy to hear that something is being done about the field, because it's a top-class field and supposed to be, like you say, an international play field. Any idea when you expect the field to be completed and properly marked and so forth?
Yeah, so we did some initial marking just to have a general idea of how it will look when marked and so forth. But that has been done. As I mentioned, Brian and the team has been doing some work on it. Our initial target was April, and we are on course to get it completed by April. The only unfortunate thing, and I wouldn't say unfortunate, it's not really a major hindrance, that we would ideally like to begin playing on it outside of the dry season, because water could be a problem. So in terms of the initial use, we're closely monitoring and having discussion as to when it's best to start utilizing it. As I mentioned, overuse is a problem, and you know, you have seen ETW Park, and when you overuse it during the dry season, you basically see dust. So we are carefully monitoring and managing the situation.
Okay. Having a beautiful football field is one thing, but as you would know, the necessary equipment and materials have to be on hand whenever you're ready to start to host football games there. Goalposts, netballs, flags, etc., etc. Where are we in terms of the
in terms of
equipment to fit out the whole thing, to make it complete.
completely. Okay, so we would have begun discussion to procure some equipment for the field. In fact, those discussions started last year, just before the onset of the pandemic, and we would have had to postpone that particular endeavor in terms of getting what is required. At this point in time, the most critical thing are the goals, because we would want to have modern goals there, goals that are movable, which makes it easy to, when there's track and field, you can move them on the outside and so forth. And
You're talking about the goalposts on the field.
Goalposts, they're now developing mobile goals, which are much lighter than those we have at the ETW Park, which make movement easy as possible. We've also discussed the benches, dugouts, which you sometimes you see on TV and so forth. We contacted a local guy who in St. Kitts who does make them, so we would have had a quote from them. But I said we had to put a lot of it on hold because of COVID, and we have to manage the finances of the department very carefully. But in terms of flags and bars, those are easy to get. We have flags, we have bars to some extent for match day, but most of the time, whoever is using the facility in terms of the league or the association, they're the ones required to provide their flags and bars. Yeah.
Okay. Now, my good friend Malcolm George Ramsey from right there in Bath Village is an international referee. Is he part of the planning as it relates to the development of football here in East?
Mr. Ramsey plays an integral role in terms of development of football, or has played an integral role and continues to. As you would know, that he is now, as you mentioned, FIFA referee, but he's now a FIFA assessor, so he assesses referees. Yeah, and so a lot of his time, he also runs the referee program for the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he a lot of his time is caught up doing that, but he still lends his advice. He still makes himself available for discussion as it relates to football development here in Nevis. He would have been initially part of a committee that was put together by the previous Junior Minister for Sport, the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, which included myself, Mr. Ramsey, Mr. Blackett, if I'm not mistaken. I think Mr. Brand was also to work closely with Mr. Keynes as it relates to the development of that facility, specifically football here. To be honest, at some time the committee didn't function as it should because persons don't like people to come and step in the area and so forth. But I think we have made some progress since. I mean, it didn't stop the development of the facility, and it sure hasn't stopped the development of the football field and the interior. Okay.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned Mr. Blackett, because I was going to ask you, what about Lester Blackett, who is perhaps our greatest footballer here in Nevis? I don't know, has he been tapped to help to develop football? The facilities are one thing, but the football itself?
I'm not sure as it relates to football on a whole in Nevis. I know we would have engaged him and invited him to events at certain periods just to get his advice and so forth. As you know, football in Nevis is run by the Nevis Football Association. The Department of Sports focus a lot on the development aspect, which is the schools and the after-school programs and so forth. So I don't know if the Football Association has engaged him, but we at the department would have had discussions with him on numerous occasions just to get advice, because he's one of those persons with a wealth of knowledge that we can utilize in preparing our strategic plans, etc.
Okay. Now, in terms of the officiating of the games, besides Malcolm George Ramsey, are there any other persons qualified to officiate as referee in our home games?
Yes. Yeah, there we have a lot, and this is because of the great work of Malcolm Ramsey.
Okay.
Kimball Ward.
Yes, well, I know he actually was before Malcolm Ramsey.
He was after Ramsey.
He came after Ramsey?
Ramsey is the one who actually brought him into refereeing.
Okay, because I heard his name on the international scene before Malcolm Ramsey.
Ramsey moved. With Malcolm Ramsey, he started refereeing for the SKNFA, and then he attended several courses. But based on his age, he moved. They recognized his ability to assess and instruct and so forth. So I think the recommendation from his lecturer then from CONCACAF was that he moved into assessing, which is, I mean, being a referee assessor in this region is a big, in any region, it's a
Yes.
very, very big thing. It means that you're in charge of assessing, developing the referees who will referee these international games. Michael Ramsey is also an instructor. He, as I mentioned earlier, he's responsible for the officials education program here. I think it's the Navy. So all the referees you see coming through here in the federation are under the tutelage of Mr. Ramsey.
That's great. That's really great news. Now, I know that some football lovers from time to time volunteer their service to be a linesman or match referee, but has there been any kind of training put on by your department, other than Malcolm George Jambi, for those persons who may be interested in becoming professional referees or linesmen? Not only for our local league, but like Malcolm George Ramsey and Terence Ward, who incidentally is also from Bad Village,
Okay, so,
to an international referee.
So as it relates to that, we have done some internal programs, but again, facilitated by Mr. Ramsey. But usually when someone is interested in officiating, we usually point them in that direction because he's the expert, you know, as far as referee training here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The other persons who are now taking on similar roles in terms of instructing, like Mr. Garfield Wober, he's now a referee fitness instructor, Macefield Elizabeth as well. He runs the officials fitness program in the entire federation. So when persons are interested in officiating, we point them to Mr. Ramsey, then he takes it from there. So the department itself, because Ramsey already have an established program on recruiting and development program, we just funnel them to Mr. Ramsey.
Okay. Now, we, like you said earlier, we have a local football association and a local league. But apart from Bad Village really participating in the National Football League, we hear nothing about football once the local league is finished. Is there a plan to take football to a higher level here in Nevis, or it's all in the name of fun?
I think for a number of years, the Football Association operated on a rocky foundation. Yeah, it was very good for an extended period, and then they went through a period of turmoil and transition. I think under the new regime, giant strides have been taken in the right direction as it relates to not only organizing the league, but improving the administration of the association itself, improving how the association operates in terms of partnering with individual entities like the Department of Sports, clubs, businesses, to improve the overall product, and partnering with the referees, because the referees are a separate entity to the association. They are contracted to work for the association. So there has been giant strides in that regards in terms of the association improving its overall operation, and with time you're going to see an overall improvement in the product of football here in Nevis. Not that we don't have talent and we don't have good teams and so forth, but to have the talent and have the good teams, and so there's a lot of variables that go into making the product. I know we often compare ourselves with St. or try to compare ourselves with St. Kitts where we are, but we need to understand that St. Kitts has been doing it right for way longer than us, and that is where the issue is. Having said that, I think you've seen Bath has been recently promoted to the Premier League. Hard times last season came within a couple points of getting to the Premier League, so it shows that there is improvement in Nevis as far as football is concerned in terms of the playing, which I think we always had talent, but in terms of the administration and how the clubs operate, how the association operate, that is as important as having good players.
Yes,
Yes.
that's true. Now, who heads up the association at present? Who is the president of the
So the
association?
president of the Nevis Football Association is Mr. Raymond Brantley. He's an entrepreneur. He lives in, I think, the Newcastle area.
Know him well, yes.
Yes. He has a team. Everett France, vice president. Tasha Parry is the secretary. Floyd Robinson is the treasurer. The PRO is Mr. Brandon Bello. I think those are the guys who make up the Nevis Football Association.
Well, when does the local league start normally?
Okay, so the local league usually starts around September. September goes a little over into February, March. But due to COVID, the league started very late. Yeah, so they were planning to restart, I think it was in this month, March, but as we discussed earlier.
Still under the watch.
Still under the watch, that's one. Cricket is currently utilizing the ETW Park. The Monday track field isn't fully completed yet. So there are some restrictions. Well, there are some restrictions as to why they haven't started as yet. Yeah, because they needed to. The season that was just completed was a combination of the season before last. If you see where I'm coming from.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Long ago we used to select a Nevis team to play in the Leeward Islands football tournament. I know they don't have that anymore. Well, why don't we pick a Nevis 11 or Nevis squad after the tournament is finished to represent us at the national level?
Okay. So it hasn't been done recently, but I know under when Rohan Isles was the president, yeah, he did put a team together after the league with the idea of playing some matches. Now, just to give some perspective when it comes to football and international matches, Nevis, there are no tournaments really for Nevis to participate in now. Now that the Leeward Island tournament is defunct. Any international matches, any international tournament has to be St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, Nevis could put a team together and probably try to organize friendlies against Montserrat, Anguilla, whoever. One of the issues with that, though, is that a lot of these countries are also part of FIFA, and when they play international friendly, they are playing for ranking points and so forth. And playing Nevis won't really benefit them. Yeah, it won't really benefit them. They will be required to play another FIFA opponent. So playing St. Kitts and Nevis will be more beneficial than playing Nevis by itself, even though Nevis is capable of competing with Anguilla and these teams. So I think that's one of the drawbacks. But I guess the association just has to be creative. It may not be official international matches, but they could organize matches against some of our neighboring countries just as friendlies, inviting them here or going there, or even playing clubs in different countries just to give the guys some more exposure.
Yes, and one of the things I was looking at when I spoke of a Navy squad to play in the National League in St. Kitts. Yes, we all know that St. Kitts is much further ahead than us by far when it comes to football. But I believe over time we will eventually catch up, and I believe more young persons too will get involved once they see that they have an opportunity to go further. That's the angle I am looking at it from, you know, because when the football finish and they just go home, you wouldn't get much people too interested in it. I believe the time has come, especially with an international feel like this, for us to take the game to a higher level and more seriously. That is the angle that I am coming from. Your thoughts? What do you think?
I agree with where you're coming from, but I would also like to say I think we are taking it more serious at this point in time. It's just that everybody is not taking it as serious as they should, and this is evident in over the last say 10 or so years. We've had a lot of our players making it into the federation teams at various age levels, and the females as both male and female. For the under, for example, for the last under 17 CONCACAF tournament, which was held in Tampa, Nevis had like 5 players in the team. In the past,
Which team?
This was the under 17.
Under 17, okay.
National team.
Yes,
So in the past, this would not have been heard of. We had the #1 goalkeeper. We had one of the best players in Dejan Myers and his brother Jalen as part of the team. So we continue to make progress. And we are continuously now putting players on the national team level. I think compared to the past, it's more now down to opportunities. In the past, I don't think we would have gotten the necessary opportunities to show that what we're capable of. And at this juncture, I would like to commend the Football Association under the leadership of Anthony Johnson, because one of his pledges in becoming president when he first took up the mantle was to make it more inclusive thing, to make sure that Nevis receive some benefits or have access to the training, and the players in Nevis who are good enough have access to train out for the national teams and so forth. And so we continuously see our players making it the national team. Even the senior team, I think it was, if not mistaken, 4 years ago, Alger Newton and Journal Turner passed was also in the national team under previous coach Jack Passy. So we would have opportunities. Our players just have to have the right mentality. All the players from Nevis who have made it on the national team are those with the right, not only the talent, but the right mentality. Yeah, they go to train. They don't look at themselves, I'm from Nevis, so these players from St. Kitts are better. They go with the mentality that I'm going to make this team. I'm as good as any player in the federation.
Okay. Let me take you back a little to the 5 guys from the under 17 that we had a year or two ago. What about the transition? Where they now? Have
So they all, and that's a very good question. They all know. In fact, before we got, those are the 5 who made the final squad. Yeah, but we had, I think it was 9 of them. There were 4 of them who didn't make the final squad. Okay. But the transition, they all now playing in the Premier League.
Premier League. Okay.
Yeah, majority with Bath. There's a Manny Williams, he's playing with Garden Hotspurs. So the fact that Garden Hotspurs, which is one of the top teams in St. Kitts, have a young division playing for them, that shows that we have talent here in Nevis.
The thing is being reversed, because for years we used to have Kitty Sons coming over to join our team, so we are now getting that's very good. So who do we have currently on the national team? Person from Nevis currently in the national team?
So right now the World Cup, the squad is preparing for the World Cup qualifiers, which commence March 24th. We have Zacchies Smith, goalkeeper from Nevis, and Dejal Myers. They were both called up to the squad for training.
Okay. Now, Bath Village, for some reason when you come around football, Bath Village seems to be the ever-present team. I mean, they seems to be fully involved in their football games. They were the first to be heading towards St. Kitts when other teams were reluctant. Bath was right there and he's still going strong. Why Bath Village? What's so special about the persons in Bath Village so good at the football game?
I don't know. I think it's something. There are a lot of theories as to why. But I think I'm going to compare it to the situation in Brazil. When you're born in Brazil, automatically people think that you'll become a good footballer.
True.
Similar to in Bath. It's expected that you're going to become a good footballer. I could go back to my own experience when I used to watch the guys from Bath, the older guys, the Robots, the Bacoon Isles, and Paul and so forth. It's that automatically I wanted, it was such a pride to represent your village. I wanted that opportunity to represent my village, so I played amongst my peers and so forth. I remember one day we were playing on the field in Bath before it was what it was, and Alfred Baker, he told
Newton's were always heavy involved in football.
Alfred told me, next day, I want you to report to the park. Bath is going to be training at the park. I want you to report to the park. And so, what happens a lot in Bath is that once we recognize talent early, we try to integrate them with the adults so they begin to develop and play at a certain level. And if you go to Bath at any evening nowadays, you recognize the field is always filled with youngsters. Yeah, even though it's a senior team practicing, the youngsters are just there kicking a ball on the side so forth. I also remember when I used to go and practice, I used to walk with my nephew Aishan Smitten. And just while we were training, he's on the side and then eventually he started to play. He represented Ivor Walters. He played for Nevis in the under 13s and so forth. He would have been drafted to the under 20 squad with the federation, and he now plays for Bath United. So I think it's almost like a culture that the youngsters gravitate towards football because it's what they're seeing all the time.
Yeah, Bath has had some. I remember Dinah, Manjaka. I mean, these guys were good footballers. I mean, Bath is like a factory for football players. Now, how do we turn that factory into a professional unit? Because we are pumping out the players, but we need to get at a certain level. What has been done to really harness that group of youngsters you see coming out of Bath into a...
They're working very hard on that. And one of the most important things was to improve the structure around the club. A lot of times, and this is not just for Bath, a lot of time success of any club, football, cricket, netball, whatever, depends on the structure around the club in terms of the administration, in terms of the policies, objectives of the club. And because persons need to be held accountable, and if you're holding people accountable, then your trajectory towards the goals that you want to achieve is much easier. And so Bath has a structure, an executive. The executive have responsibilities to support the team and so forth. The executive have the responsibility of building a link between the community and the team, but also, more importantly, building a connection between the team and the private sector. Because we operate in an amateur environment, the private sector is very instrumental in assisting in providing resources for the team. Because with resources, you can also take that next step. It's difficult to take the next step when you don't have the required equipment, the required, for example, Bath is one of the few teams in Nevis who now practices in uniform. That's a sign of professionalism.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
but that's
yes.
because of donations from persons and so forth that they're able to do that. Ordinarily, the club wouldn't be able to afford practice uniforms, and
Yes,
the
yes,
focus
yes,
would be
yes.
just on the game
Yes,
uniform.
yes, that's issue.
Yeah. So it takes a lot to get to the next level in terms of professionalism, but I think they are moving in the right direction, and a lot of parties should be credited for that.
Yes, yes. Like I said, Bath is moving and has always been a top-class area for football. Now, how do we get the rest of the country to replicate what Bath is doing? Because I recognize that since my days of football, we used to have 10, 12, 14 teams. Now it's basically six football teams, 6, 7 you're seeing. How do we grow the football to get that back to 12 teams? And like you said, each club developing itself. Like you said, money is a tight really. But if you're serious about getting the football to grow in your particular area, you will make the effort and do what you have to do to raise funds, seek sponsorship, etc., etc. Because we need to, with that international football field, we got to start thinking big.
Big. I agree with King. And one of the things is that the philosophy of the team. A lot of areas in Nevis they have teams rather than clubs. True. If you just have a team that just want to play in the league, then as you mentioned earlier, once the league is finished, there's going to be no interest until the next league. Bath as a club not only focuses on the first team, but there's a lot of effort being put into the grassroots, the youth teams coming up, the female. So there's a what they call it, there's a conveyor belt. There's a conveyor belt, but the conveyor belt flow. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of commitment from individuals who are not getting paid to do it really, and you will need similar commitment in a lot of the other communities.
You gotta have the love for it.
You have to have a love for it. That's why it's happening. You have to have the love for it. If you don't have the persons committed, and I want to applaud Alex Claxton, which you know as pastor. I mean, Alex used to coach since I was a little boy. Brother Lala. Since I was a little boy. So you see how long he's been in this thing, and he's been doing it for years without any compensation or anything like that. But because of that commitment, because of commitment of persons like Malcolm Ramsey and so forth, that's why Bath continuously produces footballers.
Okay. Now, I want to take you a little bit more into the federal aspect of it. I'm aware that there's a National Football Association, and you and I would have spoken about that before. I believe that at that time you were the only one sitting on that association. Yes. Are you still the only one sitting on that?
Yes, I'm currently still the only one. We're in our last term, so elections is due in August of this year. So I'm hoping a number of other divisions will probably join one or two of the teams who plan to contest the election, because the election is usually happens like we have with our local politics, where you vie for the executive based on being on a team or so forth.
Being on a team.
Yeah,
see, that is even a stronger point for me, because we only get one because we have Bath Village. If we had 4 or 5 teams part of the National Association, so that's something we need to work with, because we can't afford to just have one sitting in it, because all of the powers of our football on the international stage rest with that association.
Yes, because they are the
ones. Right, so it's important that we get more members on.
We just need to get more people involved. I mean, and a lot of things, like I was recruited because persons saw my good work in sports in general, not just football, and they felt like I would be an asset to the organization. So there are a lot of individuals in Nevis who I think are capable of being on the executive for the federal level. They just have to avail themselves, and also, don't be afraid to take that step. A lot of time we're afraid to take that step to take positions at the federal level. I've seen it in athletics. I'm now seeing it a bit in netball. But we just need to take that step, and because Nevis needs a voice at the federal level,
Yes.
and it's important that we as individuals who are involved in sport vie for some of those positions.
True. True. How would you say Nevis football has benefited as a result of you being part of the association, or at least the better working relationship with that association? How would you say we would have benefited as a result?
We have benefited significantly compared to the past. I'm not going to sit here and say it's perfect, because it has been a work in progress.
Yes.
But as I mentioned earlier, I think Anthony Johnson has to be commended as president, because everything he does, the association does, he wants to make sure Nevis is included and so forth. So we have had a number of training courses over here, FIFA coaching courses, CONCACAF coaching courses, Olympic solidarity courses. So we've had a number of courses over the years. We usually present equipment to the primary schools at the start of the primary school football season. We have persons from Nevis who've been trained in various areas of football. For example, recently we had a medical course. We had a number of participants from Nevis who took part in that and got their certification. We talk about the officiating. There's a number of referees from Nevis who develop under Mr. Ramsey. Now not only referee Nevis games and youth games, but they actually officiate in the Premier League and
Premier League in St.
Kitts. So there's been a lot of progress, development in terms of the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. One of the things I must point out is that the Nevis Football Association has recently become a member of the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association, which makes it a bit easier for, we had bad and hard times, and based on how the FIFA protocols are set up, the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association is responsible for its members, even though, because of relationship, they will go outside to do certain things. For example, if I say a school, if I say King is doing a festival in Cotton Ground and he needs some equipment, and I make a request on behalf of it, even though you're not a member, they will, try to assist in that regards, which really that's not how the protocol works. So with the Nevis Football Association becoming a member, it makes it easier for resources to flow to the Nevis Football Association, and then they could be distributed to reach a wider thing in Nevis rather than just Bath and Hard Times.
Understood. Now, with the Nevis Football Association being now a member, and then you still have Bath and Hard Times, how does that play? Because you would think the Nevis Association would represent our Nevis team, so to speak. How does that?
The eventuality is to have all the clubs in Nevis
becoming members.
But it was integral to take, in the short term, to take that step of the Nevis Football Association becoming a member, because they are more ready than a lot of the individual clubs.
Understood. Now, a thought just come to my mind. I remember earlier you were talking about the development of teams, lack of equipment and stuff like that. Now, FIFA gives financing and football equipment to member countries such as St. Kitts and Nevis. Isn't that one of the sources we should be tapping to get? Do they give us any equipment at all over here that they get from FIFA, like some footballs, netball? Goal posts and stuff like that.
We do get equipment. FIFA, and just to provide some perspective to persons who have, FIFA offer funding to all of its member associations. So St. Kitts Nevis will get the same, will have access to the same funding as England or Germany or whoever. Those countries really don't rely on FIFA funding, because they have money, they're commercial and so forth. Now the funding comes with specific requirements and so forth. So for example, there's a 500,000 given every year. Once you satisfy the financial requirements in terms of your audits and so forth. That's for operations. They spell out what it can be used for. Yeah, so that will include paying your staff, because a lot of people don't. The SKNFA has full-time staff. They have a full-time accountant, technical director, office managers, secretary, people who might feel, and yeah, that is to take care of your leagues and so forth, your national teams and so forth. So you could see how $500,000 could finish pretty quickly. And just to share, for example, we're currently preparing for World Cup qualifiers. We're playing 2 matches. We have to play both of it because of our quarantine period here. And the entire process, when we did the budget, he already passed $500,000. Yeah, just to show you, football is very expensive when it comes to that. But the point I'm trying to make, so for example, so they have that. They also have the equipment grant. But I mentioned earlier, it's set up so that like the association have members, so priority must be given to the members. Now, as I mentioned, because of the position that I sit, sitting on the association and being the director of sports, it has afforded me the opportunity to get equipment. How must I put it? I don't want to compromise, but not being with, for example, to provide to persons who want to do development program, even though they're not officially members of the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association. So we've gotten bars, we've gotten cones, bibs, whatever is necessary. For example, there's a new team that is coming out of the, what do you call that area? By Panko. Yeah, that area. Yeah, they are developing a new team.
Coal Hill area.
And when they wanted to start, they needed a couple stuff, and I was able to procure them for the Football Association, even though they are not official members of the Football Association. Yeah. So there's some. They do try to help with, because as I said, they're responsible for football development, so they do try to help wherever they can, as much as the laws allow, based on FIFA.
Now, I know that the Ministry of Sports, and your department in particular, does a lot for football in the schools.
Yeah.
Have you ever approached the minister to get more done for the actual football league, the older boys?
Okay, so we have
developed the game further, and a lot has been done.
Yeah, we have done our part with that in the past. As I mentioned, when the Football Association was on Rocky Foundation and it was no football, we actually put on the league. We put on 2 competitions just to make sure that Nevisians had some football to watch. So we did that. That is a discussion that is ongoing. I guess at some point we will have to sign an MOU or something like that, so that we are aware of the boundaries and so forth. Because one thing we don't want is for the Football Association to think the government is trying to take over. We are there to assist, and as much as possible, we want to assist in terms of the overall development of football. We have ideas that we think we can work closely with the Nevis Football Association with, but there must be an understanding from the outset as to the role that each entity will play for the overall development of football in Nevis.
Okay, great. Now, we know there's a football field in Bad Village. Are there any plans to further develop that field?
Yeah, there was some discussion, as we mentioned earlier, about the FIFA funding. FIFA have this program called FIFA Forward Program, which is mainly for infrastructure development and so forth. Now, currently in St. Kitts, they're completing what we call technical center, and the other project that was identified to begin after that particular was the enhancement of the Bar Village playing field for football, because they want to do a project over here in Nevis. So that was one of the things. But we've also discussed the possibility of having, rather than us focusing it on Bath, have almost like a training center for everybody to use. So it becomes a Nevis training center. Reason being, we have to look at a number of situations. If they develop that field and then Bath have its activities, it's almost like you're excluding everybody else from using it, and we don't want to go down that road. In addition to that, the field that we have been working on at the Mondo track, it's mainly for playing, so we wouldn't want any teams be practicing on that and so forth, because we talk about a facility management. So the idea is to probably somewhere in the area, if possible, if we can get some land, develop a mini technical center, a training field where teams could have access to train and so forth,
Okay.
and don't have to worry about going on the main field.
Okay, understand. Now, some time back, you were expecting a football team from Russia, I think it was.
So South Africa.
South Africa, yes,
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 yes.
yes. To come to Nevis to participate in a football, some football games at the stadium. Now, that got cancelled for one reason or the other. Any possibility of that happening anytime in the future?
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for future games. As we would have spoken some time back, South Africa, there was a female team from South Africa interested in coming here to play some games. The Nevis Athletic Stadium was identified as one of the venues they would have liked to play because I guess they saw it. I don't remember exactly how they got they saw it, but we were contacted about it. In addition to that, in 2020 last year, we began preparation to possibly host the CONCACAF Under-17 qualifiers for the Caribbean, which would have brought 8 teams to St. Kitts and Nevis, 4 in St. Kitts, 4 in Nevis. So that would have been exciting for us. CONCACAF came. They love the stadium. The only issue was supporting infrastructure because it required a dressing room and so forth.
Yes.
But they love everything about the stadium. They also began negotiating with hotels for rooms and all that. So we were going to get teams here. So we now have to recognize that potential that the field offers, and we're hoping that when things return to normal, that we will get some games here soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
So
Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Mr. Jamir Claxton, Director of Sports here in Nevis. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Jamie, the El Camino Village Park is our main cricket field. That's where we play all of our big cricket games. But I recognize that some football games are still being played there. When do you anticipate that you will be able to hand over that park for cricket purposes only?
I can't give a definite time at this point in time. A reason being, as I mentioned, is that we need to wrap up the work at the Nevis Athletic Stadium. In addition to that, we have to have a serious conversation with the Nevis Football Association because we feel like the Nevis Athletic Stadium, it cannot be overused. We cannot continuously make the same mistakes we would have made in the past, especially with the ETW Park. That's why the ETW Park, its surface is not the best because we continuously overuse it without proper turf management practices. And so they would have to recognize that they will have to find alternate venues to play the game. You cannot play every game of your league over there. And even similar with cricket, when the ETW Park is developed, which I guess we'll talk about later, the potential, that they will have to play games at other grounds as well. Yeah, because the idea of putting a lot of money into these major facilities is to attract international matches, which will bring economic activity to the island. And if they are not at the standard which is required for international matches, then why are we investing in them?
True. I know you can't say yet as to when you're coming out of Grove Park, or the Cricket Association is waiting anxiously for you to come out. Are there any plans to do anything to that field at all? The El Camino
There have been discussions ongoing, and I could go as far back as 2014, 15, and the conversation began about the redevelopment of the park and so forth. We'd have had engineers here to look at the current situation, the current structure, how the park is in relation to its surrounding its surroundings, and an initial sketch and strategic plan, action plan was put together. I did saw a rendering of the proposed development. It looks very, very nice. I haven't seen it recently, so I don't know if there's a change in the direction, but I know that the Premier and his cabinet are committed to redevelop the ETW Park and get it to the standard that is required to attract international matches. As a matter of fact, the president of the West Indies Cricket Board, he was in Nevis recently. I took him, along with the president of the Nevis Cricket Association, for a tour of the Livingston Stadium facility, and while we were there, we were discussing the ETW Park, and he was saying, man, Nevis need to get the house in order so we can get some matches here, because they understand the passion that the Nevis cricket fans have for cricket. Yeah, so Nevis is one of those places that, with the right facilities, we will get international matches, without a doubt. So I'm hoping that we could begin the process of developing that facility sooner rather than later.
Yes, I did remember the Premier mentioned it during one of his budget presentation, and they had even earmarked a figure of 15 million to do the whole project. But of course, COVID has intervened, and we know money is a short. But I was thinking, now that most of the cricket is being played at the VOJ and Playfield, quite a bit is being played there, maybe it's a good time to tee up that field and put in drainage, topsoil, good grass, and constant water until we get a first-class field. Is any consideration being given to that? I mean, despite the lack of funds, I mean, at least to make a start too.
That was also part.
Or you still need it for your football?
Yeah, that was also part of discussion, and just so like with proper management, football and cricket campaign, they just have to not play during the same season. Yes. But that some consideration was given to that. The thing they were looking at, how would it affect the long-term development plan? Because I think as part of the initial plan, there will be some extension of the field moving towards the CSS side and so forth. So all of that was taken into consideration. The ETW surface that it is definitely needs ripping up. It cannot move forward like that if we're going to attract matches, because I wasn't there when I guess I wasn't born when it was initially developed, but it was just basically a natural area being allowed to function. You just water it and hope it here. But we're in the age now where you have to have proper drainage and so forth. You have to have irrigation system in place. Otherwise, you're not going to maintain a field of quality. Yes, you need
proper topsoil and things. But a thought just come to my mind. The same guys that are ensuring that the football field is coming to a top-class standard, maybe we could get the boys to come across when they finish.
They can also
at
do
least
some work.
start. Yes.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to negotiate costs and so forth. But one of the things, and this is one of the issues we have in Nevis, is that the field will have to be out of use for a while.
For a while, a good year at least.
But we have this tendency, we have a trend of thought here, in Nevis especially, that once something belongs to government, owned by government, it belongs to all of us, so we can access it whenever we want. And that has always been a problem. I know there are times when we would have been doing some work, for example, when we were preparing for that game, those CPL games, exhibition matches, we would ask the general public not to use the park because we're trying to water, whatever. And then something we like to get people jump the fence just to,
we need to put some consequences in place.
That's what we need to do. So I guess it's something that with education and eventually with time, people understand the importance of when you're investing in a sporting facility, you're investing in it for the long haul. And so the greater good. So the general public has to play part. If we say no running on the field, no running on the field. If we say no access for 2 weeks, no access for 3 weeks. You should understand why we're doing it. We're not doing it because we just want to keep people out.
That's true. But I learned a long time, unless you have consequences to it, it's not going to work.
I agree.
All right, I want to shift your focus now to athletics. As you know, we are smack in the middle of what would have been our athletic season, was it not for COVID-19 pandemic. I want to start with the proposed athletic association that was to be formed more than 2 years ago. What has become of that idea? We met and there was discussion on...
As I sit here, I must say I'm very disappointed with the progress that has been made in that regard. The idea of us getting together was for the Department of Sports took the initiative to jumpstart the process. We cannot appoint members of the Nevis Amateur Athletic Association or anything like that. But what we tried to do was facilitate the process, bring persons interested in athletics together for them to spearhead that initiative. However, we would have, as you mentioned, we would have discussed, we would have meetings, interim committee was put in place to look at the constitution and then develop a new constitution which we would move forward with in terms of putting an executive in place to run athletics in Nevis. There has been little or no progress, in my opinion. I don't know if the persons would have lost interest, but as I sit here, I'm very disappointed because I was very excited that we were finally moving forward after. A lot of these people would have complained that Mr. Blackett has been there for 14 years with no election or anything like that, and now you put everything in place for them to move forward, spearhead, and nothing has been done.
We are good at pulling down, but we are not good. Now, I hope consideration has been given by the Department of Sports to at least try again. Let me start afresh. But this one seems to have gone dead, dormant. And I believe that now, more than ever, is a good opportunity to do that, since there is no athletics really happening. You know, this is a dead time, so to speak. So the opportunity to form an athletic association and to have it in place, you know, move forward in 2022, you know, is there any chance of that becoming a reality in 2021 when you form a... I think, honestly, I think what you might have to do, based on what is happening, is to kind of select your first association and get things going, and then the following year you'll be able to have proper elections of officers and so forth. Because it seems like when you put things in place to start the process, the persons, like you said, lost interest and nothing happens. So my suggestion, what do you think of that idea?
I agree, and we do have plans to revisit the whole process. Your suggestion is one of those that we have looked at, in terms of maybe we need to do that, establish an interim committee, and then they're going to be responsible for taking the process. But we, as you mentioned, we'll probably have to identify persons that we think, in our opinion, are going to be committed to the process, because that's the biggest challenge, getting persons committed to the process. Because it's not an easy process, and you're not getting any remuneration for it or anything like that. But if you have a genuine love for track and field and sports, I think you will give the time, because at the end of the day, the greatest benefit is having an established association which helps the development of the sport in Nevis. So your suggestion is one that we have on the table. We are looking at a number of them, which I would share with my minister to seek advice as to how to move forward.
Okay, good. Now, we haven't had any athletic meets for the past 2 years, due to COVID, of course. So let me ask you this. What kind of condition is the Mundo track in light of the fact that we had high winds, rains, hot sun beating down on it over the past 2 years?
It's in good condition, sir, because it is designed to
stand
up against those elements.
Okay.
Yes, so it's not really a concern for us at this point in time. However, we continue to monitor it to ensure that, there's no little, because sometimes when there are little damages and you ignore them, then they become
big damages.
Yes. So we continue to monitor. I meet with my management team on a regular basis, and just to have updates on all the facilities, and I also do my occasional visit, officially and unofficially, to the Mundo track.
Okay. Now, I understand from the minister that the Youth and Sports Department is now directly in charge of the stadium. Tell us a little about some of the responsibilities that are being carried out by your department regarding the management of the stadium.
Okay, so we are responsible for the upkeep of the stadium, cutting of the grass, making sure it's kept clean. We have a cleaning crew in terms dedicated to dealing with the bathrooms and so forth, because even though no sports is happening, athletes are still training occasionally at the track. Yeah, we are currently in the process of developing the facility management plan for over there. It is important that we have such in place because, as I alluded to earlier, divisions feel, and I have been guilty of it in the past when I was younger, that when something belongs to government, I can access it and I can do what I want, whenever I want. Yeah, so we have to put policies in place to ensure that over there lasts a very long time. So we are currently working on facility management, basically like a handbook, which we're going to utilize to manage that particular facility. Hope we get it signed off by the Ministry of Sports. So everything related to that facility will be guided by the handbook, which includes who use it, when you use it, the requirements. You probably have to fill out an official contract if you want to use it for an event and so forth. Things like that. What are the consequences for your organization doing any damages to the facility? Things like that we're putting into the handbook. So we are talking to experts. We are also doing our research and utilizing international resources of what they do at major stadiums, which are bigger than us, but we gather the information and we tailor it to fit our situation here in Nevis. So we have been working on that for a number of months now, and we're hoping to have that roll out soon.
Okay. I remember some time ago you and I spoke of the need to put some additional bathrooms in place at the stadium.
Yeah.
Now that this COVID is with us, the need for that is even greater than before. Any consideration given to that at this time?
Yeah, there was consideration. If we were having sport, there was consideration. Because it's necessary considering, and the reason why we discussed that, we recognize that when there are major events over there, like the Inter-Prime, the Inter-High, the number of bathrooms that we have create a long line because persons
definitely need some more.
So we temporarily, what we did the last event we had, we used the porta potties as to what's the word? Yeah, as additional bathrooms. Yeah, substitutes. Yeah, to us. Yeah, but long term they will need for more bathroom. Now, as a ministry, we'll have to make a decision. Are we going to focus on developing one of the main stands with bathroom, or are we just going to put down additional bathrooms? I think the focus should be developing one of the seating
capacity.
Yeah, and with bathroom, supporting bathroom facility. Yes, that will make sense at this point in time.
Yes.
So I am hoping, with my advice, that's the direction that the ministry takes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know that financing is very limited at this time. But has there been any discussion at all about that same seating capacity being developed further?
Not recently. Yeah, I said it. The conversation is probably slow now because of finances, but we haven't had any discussions on that recently.
Yes. Okay. Now, there are still some things that are necessary at the stadium other than seating, such as sound system, more athletic equipment, etc. Has any effort been made to secure any of those during this quiet period? Because you see, now may be the perfect time to try and secure at least some of these things while nothing is happening. So you use that dead time to quietly secure whatever you can to upgrade the stadium.
So in terms of equipment to run a meet game, we actually started procuring them last year, which we did. So we would have had, usually we would have to borrow certain things from St. Kitts.
Yes.
We were able to cut that in half based on some of the stuff that we bought already. In addition to that, I know our Premier has been working very hard in terms of securing some additional equipment. There's some equipment required that are very expensive. For example, the photo finish machine, it's accompanying components and so forth. They cost like thousands. And when I say thousands, like I'm talking like 50,000 stuff. So
big money.
Big money. Yeah, so he's been working very hard in trying to secure those additional equipment such as the jump beds and all that kind of thing. we are also looking at those as well. We have reached out, prior to COVID, we reached out to a number of individuals in the United States and who were trying to assist us in speaking to colleges and so forth, who will probably change their better. So we said, once it's in good condition, I think we can use it. So we had those discussions. I remember the last discussion we had with one individual was actually during the high school championship here in Nevis. He was here visiting, and he was going to put some things in place to see what could happen. So we are really trying and making an effort.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand athletic equipment. I mean, sports equipment in general, no matter the sport. Cricket, you play cricket, expensive gears. Same thing with athletics. The equipment required to run, and if it's costly.
So there's quite a lot of sporting organizations across the globe who I'm sure will be more than willing to assist with those things for our stadium. Has there been any effort made thus far to engage any of those organizations?
Okay, so it depends on which organization. So in terms of IWF,
those big ones is what I'm talking about. I mean, Olympic
Olympic
Association and stuff like that.
Yeah, we would have a conversation with persons who sit on these, the executives of these. We have our good friend who is in charge of NACAC, which is the regional association. Identified. We would have had conversations with him. He was supposed to go and make a case for us at his highest level with the colleagues. Haven't heard anything in relation to that as yet. In addition to that, the Olympic Committee and IWF and so forth, they operate similarly to FIFA. So they quickly give assistance to the federal body. It's up to us now. The good thing about it for track and field, we have persons who sit on the federal body. It's up to us now to find a way to funnel those resources down to Nevis, which is important. Why we should have the Nevis Athletic Association, because in addition to that, a lot of these non-profit organizations that run these international sporting bodies, they don't give resources to government. They have to give to the association. The association and government cover. I've heard this discussion many times. They want to have relationships with government in terms to assist in the development of a particular sport, but they wouldn't give resources to government.
They prefer the NGOs.
The NGOs, They just want the government to facilitate the NGOs developing the sport in the particular country. So that's one of the major struggles. So for us to get equipment, it'll probably, from any organization, it'll probably have to be a private organization or even a country that we have good bilateral relationship with.
Now, COVID is going to be with us for a while, there's no doubt, but I'm sure we are going to have, or at least hoping to have some athletic meet, hopefully before the year ends. If that happens, how do you intend to deal with the necessary COVID protocols and social distancing, mask wearing, hand washing, etc., etc.?
So we at the department, we have action plan for if we're hosting sporting events to deal with COVID. Some of them are general, some of them are sports specific, because you have to take into consideration not only the fans. A lot of time we focus solely on the fans, but also the athletes or the players and so forth. So we have those at the department. The greatest challenge when it comes to that, however, is the fans. The fans adhering to the protocols and so forth. Our fans, and just for me, I want us to have sports. I want us to have been vocal about it. On shows like these, I've been vocal about it on social media and so forth. I want us to have sports. I understand the challenges, but our fans have to play a role in regards to when we have events that if they say wear a mask, wear a mask. A lot of time people come to the event, they say you have to wear a mask. They wear the mask to get in, but once they get in,
you take it off.
Yeah, they have events where the social distancing areas are marked, highlighted, so you see them, but naturally persons are going to want to sit close to each other. So, a lot of time it's challenging, but I want us to have sports. We have to accept that we're having sports in a challenging environment. So,
okay. Now, one of the problem we seem to have here in Nevis is getting the required amount of volunteers. And when the Minister of Sports was here, I asked him if he knew if training were being offered to volunteers to assist us with the officiating during athletics meets. That will be taking place at the stadium in the future. He said he wasn't aware. Now, you may be in a better position to answer that than him, so shed some light on that for us.
But we did have, in 2019, we had a number of, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, because the Department of Sports and the Department and Ministry of Education work very closely when it comes to sports as it involves the schools and so forth. So myself and Mr. Barrett, we would have discussed and we would have put on a number of training first for lead officials and then for the supporting officials in 2019, in the hope that in 2020 we will be able to utilize them, but you know what happened in 2020 as regards COVID, yeah. So we have very good relationship with trainers at the SKN Athletics, which is a national body. So whenever we require to do training, we just have a discussion with them, we put the program together, and then we put on the training.
Okay. But as it stands right now, you think if we have to have a meet, we have enough volunteers to officiate that meet, or we still have to do like we did a couple days ago, which is to beg some from St. Kitts to come over and assist us?
I think we have enough. The problem will be sometimes the availability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we do have enough. We do include the St. Kitts officials all the time, because there are officials in St. There are a number of officials in St. Kitts that they are dedicated to track and field. So no matter where meet is headed, they want to assist. I know sometimes it caused some controversy over here, but they will come assist in Nevis. If you tell them, if you call them today and say we want to have a meet tomorrow, they're going to be here. There's a specific group. Yeah, they always make themselves available, whether the meet is in Nevis, Sandy Point, Barcy, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know one of the things that, and I guess that's where the question comes from, we're also trying to increase our pool over here as well. Yeah, so that, as I mentioned, availability has been an issue. So that if, for example, the King is not available, then they know, okay, we still have Jamir too. So that's the road we're taking.
But the point is, they have to be qualified.
Qualified, yeah.
And that is why the St. Kitts end is able to come and assist us, because we don't have enough. You probably might have persons who are willing to volunteer, but they're not qualified.
And that's why we
so
have
that
done
is
the
why after the training, right?
That's why we have done the training.
Right.
And even when we have done the training, that there were a number of training we did that we didn't get the numbers that we anticipated, because we were hoping that we got the numbers, you know, because we could put on the training, but if we don't get the numbers, it still defeats the purpose.
What about the public awareness for that training period? Because if people don't know about the training, you need to really advertise it and let people know the training is going on.
That's something that we probably have to do better.
Step up,
in terms of public relations in relation to that. And I said, me and Mr. Barrett, we are continuously having discussions and going back to the drawing board as to how we get the information out and so forth.
Yeah, you got to get it out to the public, because if you're going on to choosing, like you have to ask Tom, Dick, and Harry to come, you're going to have a problem. If you try it out to the public, you tend to get more, and then you'll get the ones who really want to be part of it.
Agreed.
Okay, I want to focus on the athletic meets themselves. I know that you were having some serious discussions with your counterparts in St. Kitts regarding the possibility of having an inter-primary schools championship meet between the top 4 primary schools in St. Kitts versus the top 4 primary schools in Nevis. COVID, of course, has set us back as far as that is concerned. But where are we with regards to that championship?
So the last set of discussion we would have had on that championship, I know initially it was supposed to be top 4 versus top 4.
Yes.
But we did make some adjustments, and rather than focus on top 4 schools, top 4 athletes at each meet. Reason being, you could have athletes from prep who dominated the race, but because their school didn't finish on the top 4,
yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, that would not allow that athlete the opportunity.
Right.
So we would have made that adjustment. We were having discussion with potential sponsors and so forth. As you know, COVID came around. So we haven't had a discussion about it recently, and that's in light of the current situation in regards to the requirements of the COVID task force, where they are proposing no spectators at events, at sporting events. I'm missing that event because I have some issues with that. Yeah, with the inconsistencies, the perceived inconsistencies from the task force, in my opinion. And this is the opinion of Jamir Claxton, so not the opinion of the Navy Side administration or anybody like that. Yeah, so I just want to make that clear. That yeah. So because of all of that, we don't know where we're going in terms of that. It's difficult to make commitments at this point in time. Yeah.
Yes. We're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel where we're hearing, we now have the vaccines and we're hearing of some easing of, restrictions. Now, as a result of that, do you think, it's a little early to speak, but are we likely to see any athletic meet at this stadium during 2021, whether local, regional, or international?
I'm hoping that we do have some event before the year, because the general public is starving for some track and field. It has been almost 2 years. I think the last meet we had was the high school championship, and that was fortunate. That happened basically a week or so before the whole COVID thing. So we are hoping, just for the general public to be aware, we have been pushing through the Ministry of Education. A proposal was submitted to the task force as to how we think we should go about the schools having the individual sports. So the plan was to take it step by step. We deal with the individual sports at first, and then if that's successful, then we look at how we'll deal with inter-primary and inter-high. Unfortunately, and as I said, that's why I have some concerns. Unfortunately, we haven't had, at this point in time that I'm aware of, we haven't had a response from the COVID task force. I find it concerning. I find it kind of disrespectful, in my opinion. I hope I don't get in any trouble, King.
With light at the end of the tunnel, like I said, with the vaccine and so forth, maybe you could make another approach.
We'll try that. We'll try that. But it's a challenge knowing that somebody could have a dance, but we can't have a sport.
I understand what you're saying.
And the problem is the Department of Sports and the Department of Education who face the fire on a daily basis from the general public, not the task force.
True.
Yeah, and because we don't have answers to give. If there was a situation where the task force would have said, yeah, you're sending a proposal, but we don't think it's good enough for you to have sports this year, then it would have a short answer.
Something
because the general public keep asking, are we having sports? But we can't say yeah or no. And that puts us in a very difficult position. Yeah, and then not only put us as a department, no persons are targeting the ministers, which is wrong. So it's just give us answers. If we can't have it, we can't have it. At least we could put it out there that we can't have sports, and these are the reasons why. We can have sports, but these are what the regulations that you have to adhere to. The general public just need answers, and we don't have the answers we give them because the powers that be hasn't provided us with the necessary information to disseminate to the general public.
Well, they're hearing you loud and clear right now, so I think they would have.
And I know, and just on a point of order, I commend the task force for the job they have done in terms of managing COVID-19. So this is nowhere a knock on them for the work they've done. I think they've done a tremendous job, and while I do advocate for us having sports and so forth, and I don't like some of the things, I will never say that I haven't done a good job. They have done a tremendous job. It's because of them, St. Kitts Nevis is as safe as it is, and we haven't had the amount of cases that a lot of our neighbors have been having. So I don't want to.
Just that Jamie would have like a response to this. That's what I feel.
Well, Nevis in particular, because Mr. Barrett was the one. And it's just that, the perceived inconsistencies from because when I give examples, somebody will call, so nothing on the sports yet. So we say, well, we haven't heard from the task force, but we're working towards it. But if we have sports, it's going to be with our fans. But then I said it. Then I said, "Well, allow." I went on the beach. I went on the beach by weekends, and these are the conversations that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Did you try reach out to my good friend Hilroy Brandy, Commissioner? He's a reasonable fellow.
I know, Mr. Brandy is a reasonable fellow. Well, Mr. Barrett is the one mainly leading the negotiations in this part, because I say we were going to start with the individual schools, and then we proceed to go from there. So Mr. Barrett will be the best person. I know in our last conversation we haven't received anything from them as yet.
Okay, well, let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Hopefully, like I said, with light at the end of the tunnel, a response may be coming shortly.
Shortly, yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, what's happening with the athletic clubs here in Nevis in this quiet period? Are they active? Are they doing anything at all?
Yeah, most of them have been active. I know a lot of them actually started the pre-season back in November. Still, even though they weren't sure if we were going to have sports and so forth, a number of them began the pre-season. They were training on the road, training in the park. In fact, at afternoons, a number of the athletes still train at the Mondo track. I don't think we have the large numbers that would usually happen in anticipation of a meet ahead, but most of the major athletes here in Nevis are training.
Okay. Now, St. Kitts normally have a club championship. Are they having that still?
I'm not sure because the St. Kitts Athletic have also been in discussion with the task force as well.
Okay.
I know I went to a meeting on behalf of football, Federal Football Federation, and I met the president of the St. Kitts Nevis Athletics there. The meeting happened to be just before ours.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't get to speak with them after because we had to go in right after them to ascertain as to how things look in regards to any meets this
So
year.
he may have been experiencing the same thing like you.
Similar,
So he went in person to find out what's happening. Maybe that's something.
So the task force, and the task force usually, what you have to commend them for, they usually set up meetings so that you can go and make your case. Like you sit in front of a panel and you present to them, and for the most part, I think they have been reasonable. They do listen. They do offer advice occasionally. They do offer some advice as to like if they see something in your plan that they think is going to bring risk to the general public, they will point it out and they will tell you why not go this road. So and that's why I mentioned I'm not condemning them because I'm commending them for the job they have done. It's just that sometimes the perceived inconsistencies, the backlash comes to department.
Understood. Are you aware of any overseas meet on the horizon that our athletes could at least aspire to? So to keep them training, because in this quiet period, you don't want them eating a lot of stuff, and then putting on weight and losing interest. I'm hoping that something is on the horizon, for them to aspire to keep them training.
I know Carifta.
Yes. When is that supposed to happen?
Usually it happens in April. But the last correspondent I think I saw, they were going to push it back to July in the hope that all the travel restrictions and so around the region would be relaxed somewhat, because the last communication I saw that they had pushed Carifta back to July in the hope that things will be a lot better by the time July come around. So I know a number of athletes have been working towards that as well. Yeah.
Now, the Olympic Games scheduled to take place in Japan in a little over 3 months' time, but with the COVID still very much present across the world and with COVID in every conversation, I doubt that will happen. Yeah. But I would like to hear your take on that.
Yeah, COVID has seriously disrupted the world.
Yes.
I know there have been a lot of ongoing conversations as regards to all the major sporting events that are scheduled for the summer, the Olympics included. I know there are countries, for example, where they wouldn't want athletes coming from because of the new strains. As for example, Brazil and South Africa, there are issues with regard to the new strain of the COVID. And a lot of countries are concerned in relation to the athletes mixing with the athletes from those countries. So the International Olympic Committee is confident that the Olympics will happen.
Despite all
of this. I know the Japanese organizing committee, I saw an interview, they said they're also confident it will happen, but it probably be a scaled down games. Yeah, so right now I think there are discussions as to how they're going to go about doing the game. I know there are countries who want them to postpone the game or cancel it completely. But I don't think Japan want to cancel it after all the billions they would have invested in the infrastructure for the games and so forth. So it's an ongoing conversation. I guess at some point in time decisions will be made. I guess countries will make a decision as to whether they will participate. And I know at one point in time, I think Canada was saying they're not going to participate. So I don't know, but there are other countries who want to go, but they will go knowing that the athletes are going to be safe, so they're waiting to see all the protocols and so that are going to be put in place. And I know there's just a lot of conversations right now as to how. I saw an interview, I don't know if it's BBC, where they're saying they may have to put they may have to have different parts of the games
in different
places. Okay. Show Japan. I remember the games was focused mainly in Tokyo.
Yes.
So they will probably have to spread it out across Japan. Yeah. So and also they may also use the spectatorless model, which defeats the purpose of the Olympic Games. Yeah. So well, all of these discussions have been taking place.
Yes. They probably make up the monies on the television. Right. Yeah. Now, before we close the program off, I forgot to ask you, the school's program, the school football competition, cricket competition, between St. Kitts and Nevis, we always have this inter-high championship in terms of cricket and so forth. Are we having that this year?
So we haven't had any of this because of COVID and the difficulties that COVID have created. We haven't. Most of those were postponed indefinitely. So as of now, we are not sure when we'll be able to have them. But that's the situation with that. But as I said, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, so we're hoping with the vaccine and so forth that normalcy will resume in regards to sports, Charlie.
Yes. Well, Jamie, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. I know you're a busy man despite the COVID situation. You're still going full speed ahead. Now, any final words for our listening and viewing audience?
For our viewing audience, especially those who continuously ask questions about the track and field, because it's track and field term.
Yes.
We'll continue to work hard, we'll continue to engage the task force. We're hoping that before the season is over, we'll probably be able to put on a meet or two. So as we get information, we'll update the general public. We just ask for your patience because we are doing what we have to do, but also the task force, they have a responsibility to the wider general public, and so they're doing what they have to do, and the hope is that we find a middle ground and we could have some track and field before the season is over.
I am confident that you will with the vaccines and the way things are easing up around the world. I'm sure we will have some sort of athletic meet. I got my fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Folks, we have come to the end of another edition of Government at Work. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming. Then have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.